Hi everybody at home. You need a notebook, please. New project information coming your way today. All righty. There is stuff in the middle of your table, which I see you have definitely found. Try to push that away and not have that be a distraction right now. You will be using it today, just not yet. Thank you. Okay. So just to kind of touch base about what we have been doing, we just finished the plate yesterday. It was due yesterday, the video, the artist statement. I graded about half of them yesterday, and then I totally burned out and I wasn't able to look at a computer screen any longer. So if you don't have a grade on your plate yet, it's not your fault, okay? I just didn't finish grading. For those of you who I did give a grade to on the plate, I would have typed comments when I left the grade so that you would know why you got the grade that you did. If you ever have any questions about the grade that I gave you, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm more than happy to go over things with you. Oh, look at Matt being all smart and reading up ahead of time. All right, so new project today. So on the next clean page in your notebook, please write up at the top, kurinuki box. That is a fun name for a fun project. This one is really weird, but in a good way. I think you're going to like it. It's a very different way of working than most of us have done before. Although some of you, who here, raise your hand, if you took Ceramics A this year and you had a distance learning. Okay, so those of you who had Ceramics A this year, did we do a kurinuki project in your Ceramics A class? Yeah. So you know what it is, you know what it is, you know what it is. Okay, all right. So some of you have done this technique before, but you haven't made this form before. So the form is new. And then for most of you, everything is new. So you'll learn about it along the way. Now, I said this is a special project, and not only because it's this brand new technique that most of you haven't done, but also because this is your Raku project. This is your one and only time to work with Raku clay and to make a project that can be fired outside in our Raku kiln. So what's so special about Raku? It's a grittier clay that allows it to be fired outside and be able to withstand the thermal shock of going from really hot to really cold really quick. And what happens when it goes from really hot to really cold is you get these amazing special effects on the glazes that can't be achieved any other way. So you either get crackles if you use a crackle glaze. There's two kinds of Raku glaze, crackle glazes and flashing glazes. So you can either get this crackle effect that makes it really look really old and antique, or you can get this flashing effect where it turns out coppery and metallic-y like an oil slick. So those are the two effects that come from Raku fire. But even within those two different types of glaze and two different effects, there's a million different things that could happen. It's different every time based on how hot it was when we pulled it out. When you put it into the barrel of sawdust, you know, where does the fire start? So there's a million variables. Turns out different every time. That's part of the joy of Raku firing. So I'm going to show you a really, really quick video so you kind of know what's coming. And so you have an idea what Raku is all about. And it would help if I turned on the sound. There we go. At first, I didn't know why they were firing those on their sides, but they're actually little speakers that are meant for putting your cell phone in. So this is the Raku kiln. We have 3 Raku kilns, 2 that look like this, 1 that looks like this. There's air holes so you can see inside there, and so oxygen can get in and out of the kiln. The fuel source is a propane tank, like the kind that you have at your grill at home. And the torch that's being used to heat it is a weed burner that you can get at any hardware store. So they're prepping the reduction chamber, which is just a garbage can, metal garbage can full of sawdust. When the pots are 1800 degrees, you pull the lid off the Raku kiln, you use tongs, the pots are hot, and then you put the hot pots in the sawdust, which immediately ignites it on fire. There's still oxygen all around the pots right now. But then you put the lid on. And as soon as the lid is on, the fire burns up all the oxygen that's in the canister, and it brings copper to the surface of the glaze. So this pot, when they pull it out, you'll remember it's green when it went in. That was the copper glaze. And now it's all kind of crusty because of the ash. But if you dunk it in water to crash cool it and scrub it a little bit, you can see the water is actually boiling from the hot pot. If you scrub it a little bit and get all that ash and carbon off the surface, you get this metallic effect. So that happens in the reduction chamber. The pot doesn't look that special when it comes out of the kiln, but when you put it in that garbage can full of sawdust and the oxygen gets eaten away, that's when the magic happens. Isn't it beautiful? And if you were to use a crackle glaze, so they used a flashing glaze, but if you used a crackle glaze, when that gets pulled out of the hot kiln, the first thing we do is we spray it with some water to cool it like immediately, and that makes the cracks form, and you won't be able to see them right away. But then you take that crackled pot and you put it in that garbage can, and all the carbon of the smoke goes into the cracks. And so that's what makes the cracks look black. So that's the special firing that we're going to do on these pots. I think so. I'm showing a PowerPoint. I don't need internet at the moment. So I wanted to just give you a little heads up about that. These are your new terms, so please take a couple minutes to get these in your notebook. Do you need a notebook? I got you. You're my first group that gets to Raku fire this year, so I'm super excited about this. Usually we do it 2 times a year. So you're my first group that's going to get to do it. While you're writing, I'll just mention, we're going to Raku fire on a non-in-person day. We're going to Raku fire on a Friday afternoon. So it'll be a kind of thing where it'll be optional for you to come back for that Raku firing, but I'm going to strongly encourage you to come and be part of that Raku firing. And we're going to do it the day I've picked, so hopefully the weather's nice, is the day right before prom. So I think prom is the 15th. Is that right? 17th. It's 17th. Okay, so then that means we're Raku firing the 16th, that Friday the 16th. And I'll talk about that a lot as we get closer to it, because I'm really going to try and recruit as many of you to be there as possible. Because it takes a village to be able to Raku fire. There's a lot of jobs. And you don't have to be the person that pulls the pots out with the tongs if that makes you nervous. You don't have to do that. You can do a job that's less fiery, less burn your eyebrows off. Just kidding, nobody's ever burned their eyebrows off. So I'll be talking more and more about that as we get closer to the date. We're starting the Raku project now, so it has plenty of time to dry, to get bisque fired, because it has to be bisque fired first. And then we'll have lots of time before we actually fire. Somebody else said that today too, that they haven't had to take any notes. All right, go ahead, keep writing. I'm going to start elaborating on these terms. So you'll notice a lot of these terms are Japanese today, because this technique that we're learning is a Japanese technique. So kurinuki is a Japanese term referring to the hand building technique of starting with a solid block of clay and then hollowing it out. So that's very different than you've ever worked before. You've worked where you add pieces of clay together. You've never started with a solid block and hollowed it out. So very different way to work. Some people really, really take to it because it is so unique. Term number 2 is flange. You're making a box for this project, a box with a lid, and that lid needs to be fitted. So the way you're going to make it fitted is you're going to add a flange. So here's a box that was made last trimester. They did not use Raku clay because they didn't get to Raku fire, haha on them. But here's a flange. So that edge right there that sits down inside the box and keeps it from sliding around, that's going to be one of the things you'll have to do. Next is subtractive. Subtractive is a method of making things. It's where you're removing material to get the desired form. So usually, as I said, you've done additive, where you add things together till you get the desired form. Now you're going subtractive. You're subtracting till you get the desired form. Term number 4 is aesthetic, and that's something maybe you've heard me talk about before. The aesthetic is the look of an object or the vibe of an object. I hope I used that word right. I don't really understand modern lingo, but the overall look or vibe of a work of art. And the aesthetic could be geometric. It could be a very clean aesthetic. It could be a very masculine aesthetic. It could be a very floral aesthetic. There's lots of different aesthetics, but the aesthetic we're going for with this unit is Wabi Sabi. You may have heard this before. Sometimes people will, kind of make a mess of something and they'll say, well, that's pretty Wabi Sabi. That's not really the accurate way to use the term. So what Wabi Sabi means is it's a Japanese aesthetic that finds beauty in imperfection. Like in nature, you go out in nature, a leaf is not 100% perfect. There's going to be some asymmetry. There's going to be a curl to it. A rock is not perfect. A stream flowing is messy and chaotic and not perfect. But all of those things have an inherent beauty in their imperfection. That's what Wabi Sabi means. It means that the thing doesn't have to be 100% perfect, quote unquote perfect, to be beautiful. So that's what we're going to embrace with this project. And there's a lot of freedom in that, to make something that doesn't have to be perfect. That really can be scary for people who live in perfection, but also it can be very freeing to kind of leave yourself open to change. So Wabi Sabi aesthetic is what we're going to be pursuing here. And this is just a really short little video that, oh, sorry. Actually, yeah, now is the time to play that. So this is going to be a time-lapse video of someone making a kurinuki box. We're going to do something similar to what she does, but also we're going to do some things in our own way. So this is the part we're going to get to do today. We're going to be beating up a chunk of clay, working on getting the outside to look satisfying, the way that we desire it to be. We're going to cut the lid off today, but we're not going to start hollowing it out like she's going to hollow it out. Our clay is going to be too soft to do that. This is the kurinuki technique, scooping it out from the inside, little by little, one layer at a time, until your walls are consistent. The biggest thing to watch out for as you're carving is that you don't end up distorting the shape. Because if you distort it too much, that lid won't be the same size as the box anymore. They won't fit anymore. So that's why you support the outside as you carve the inside. do the carving in phases. First, we just kind of do the rough carve, and we'll do that on Monday. And then when things have firmed up a little bit more, then we'll fine tune the carving. So things that we're going to be doing differently, we will add a flange inside the lid after it's carved, and then we'll also add a handle on the top, so it's easy to pick up that lid. So this exemplifies Wabi Sabi because it's got unevenness. The marks are different on every side. The lid kind of slants a little bit, but when you look at it, it looks really pleasing to the eye. It looks really satisfying, like this is a chunk of wood or something you might stumble upon in the forest. So here's an example of a kurinuki box. It's maybe not exactly the way we're going to do it. They do have a lid, though, or sorry, a handle. That's something that we'll do. They cut their lid in a funky way. We're just going to do a straight cut across with a wire tool, which will also be satisfying and very satisfying and fun to do. Here are some other kurinuki items that you could make, and just to give you some ideas, and you might want to jot these down on your paper in front of you so you remember kind of what you could do with this. The Raku process makes the pots 100% not food safe. It is not safe to eat or drink out of a Raku pot. So we're going to make things that are not going to come into contact with food. Okay, so a jewelry box would be a great thing to make, something that you could store some earrings or some rings or bracelets or necklaces in, is one of your options. Here are some additional jewelry boxes. You can see how elaborate these shapes are. They don't have to be cube-based like they were in that video. You can make them a pyramid shape, a sphere, a cylinder. You could make them a hexagon shape. Really, the sky's the limit. Here are some more little jewelry boxes. These are probably going to be, we won't work quite this small, but our work will not be big. All right, you're going to get one chunk of Raku, and that's all you're going to get. So, so the pieces aren't going to be huge. Another thing you could do for this is you could make a garlic box. A garlic box is something that's meant to store bulbs of garlic. And I said that this shouldn't come into contact with food, but a bulb of garlic has a skin around it that would protect it from the Raku blades. So you could make a garlic box. Garlic boxes have holes in it so the garlic can breathe, but yet it's still dark, which would mean that the garlic, if you have it in there a long time, it would be less likely to start growing. Because if you have garlic a really long time, the bulbs actually start to grow and reproduce plants. So keeping it in the dark, but still giving it some air is a good way to store garlic. So that's the thing you could make if someone in your family really likes to cook and use a lot of garlic. You could make an incense holder, something that has spaces in it, holes in it that you cut through the walls. So if you put a cone of incense in there, and I actually have cones of incense for you. So if you want one of these, if you make an incense holder, you can have one. But test it out and make sure it works. But if you remove the lid, you can put a cone in there, light it, and then smoke comes out through the little spaces. So that's kind of a neat thing to make. And yet another thing you can make is a candle holder, something that you can put a tea light in. And again, I have little battery operated tea lights. And so if you make a candle holder, I'll give you one of these so you can see how the light shines out through the little space. So the thing to mainly remember is that this can't be a thing that's you're gonna eat out of or drink out. But literally any other container device would be great. So some things to just remember, these are requirements I want you to keep in your mind. You don't have to write these down, just listen in. So this is going to be carved from a solid chunk of Raku clay. People at home, you have a small bag of Raku clay. It's labeled Raku clay, and that's what you're going to be using for this project. People who are here, there are bags of Raku already on your table, and you're going to be using one of those today. You're going to be shaping it today, taking off the lid today, hollowing it out on Monday. Next requirement, the walls of the box and lid must be consistent thickness, and we'll work on that. I'll talk about that when we get to the carving stage. The lid must have a flange that makes it fitted and a creative handle that works with the overall look of the box. So no little pebble handles, no little loop handles, because those are very basic, and we want our handles to be a little bit more interesting. And then finally, Mark's designs an overall aesthetic looks purposeful, not accidental, balanced and unified throughout the form. So it can be funky and wabi-sabi, but still look like you meant to do what you did, right? It didn't just fall on the floor and you're like, well, that's fine. So we do want our things to be unified and purposeful looking, even if they are wabi-sabi. And just to kind of show you a difference between what we would call a clean aesthetic, which is mostly what you've done. Everything in ceramics that you've done so far, I would say falls into the clean aesthetic. So wabi-sabi, a little bit more funky, open to chance, go with your gut. Maybe it's a little bit more rough. And so just a contrast between the clean aesthetic that you're used to and the wabi-sabi, which might be a little bit uncomfortable for some of you because it's a little bit less perfect. So these are your steps for today. Again, you do not have to write these down. I'm going to leave these up on the screen. No sketches. We're going to jump right into this today, which is, again, something I don't usually do with you. You can certainly sketch if you would like, but what I have found from the last time I did this is that there's so much experimentation involved with this technique that you could plan something on paper, and then in reality, that's not what happens, because you start playing around with the tools and you're like, well, I like this, so I'm going to make it look like that now. So we're going to go a little bit more with our gut on this one. Go by instinct and experimentation. So you're going to start, and you're not going to do this yet. I'm just talking you through the steps right now. You're going to start with your block of Raku. It's already wedged, so you don't even need to wedge it. It's like compacted, ready to go. And you're going to begin to compress it by knocking it on the table. People who are at home, if you have a really rickety table, you could knock it on the floor. Just make sure your floor is clean, or put down a piece of paper. You're going to start to tap it and knock it and paddle it. If you have a piece of wood, people at home, what I have out on the tables for these guys are blocks of wood like this. So if you have a block of wood that you can use to paddle it too, that is a really awesome tool to use. So you're going to paddle it until it is starting to take a shape that you find interesting. A wabi-sabi, organic, irregular type of shape. And if you want it to be more regular and, maybe leaning more towards a clean aesthetic, that's okay too. Then when you have a shape that you're pretty in love with and you really like how it's looking, we're going to take a wire cutter. And there are wire cutters. There's only one on each table, so we're going to have to share. People at home, you have a wire cutter that looks like this. It's in a little baggie. It's 2 washers with a piece of fishing line tied between it. That's what you guys have here too. And we're going to use that to cut our lid really cleanly. So the lid should be cut somewhere in the upper 2/3 of the pot. So you still have a lot of storage in the pot below. And then the top lid that you cut away is like 1/3 of the pot, or a 1/4 of the pot. Once you've cut your lid, we're going to put a Kleenex or a piece of paper towel, dry paper towel, between the lid and the box so that they don't get restuck together. And then you're going to snap a picture of that. That's as far as we're going for today. We're going to bag it up after that and let it sit bagged up for the long weekend. It's actually okay if it dries a little bit in that bag, but we won't leave the bag open. We don't want it to dry too much. Otherwise, when we come back on Monday, we won't be able to carve the inside. So we're just going to bag it with that one little piece of paper towel between the lid and the box. Okay, those are your steps. That's what I'm going to freeze up here on the screen. I'm going to call you guys over to table 9 to actually show you some of these steps live and in person. So come on over around table 9, please. stop sharing. Tatiana, can you turn on the lights for us, please? Here's some of the boxes that were done last trimester. This one, which actually the lid doesn't fit super well. It needs to be sanded a little bit. But this one is like a crystal. So it was paddled irregularly until the sides were all flat. And then the little crystals were added as the handle. You open it up. And there we go. So that's one of them. And this was just paddled with a block of wood, a flat block of wood, to get those angles really flat, and also on the table. This one, which is supposed to be a little monster, and you open it up and there's the mouth of the monster. So this one was planks on your table. And so this was paddled kind of on the side like this to make that texture that almost looks kind of hairy. And then the eyeball is the handle. And on the bottom, little carved foot. Okay, I wish I could pass these around, but I probably shouldn't. So here is approximately what everybody's Raku clay looks like. And when you first pull it out of your bag, if you just take a tiny little bit of it and kind of run it through your fingers, what you're gonna feel is grog. One of the things that makes Raku clay be able to do the things that it does outside is the rocks that's in it. So that grog, if you run it, mash it through your fingers, you'll feel those little tiny rocks. So then once you have your block of clay, this came straight from the factory, straight from the bag, so you don't need to wedge it. So what you could start to do is just kind of pack it on your table, use one of the planks. People at home, I'm so sorry that I didn't have wood pieces to give you. Hopefully you have wood pieces at home. If you don't, you can just do it on your table to get things flat. So I'm gonna start by going for that kind of shape, the kind of crystal shape. And because the clay is a little bit plastic right now, it's starting to kind of stick where the wood is getting kind of saturated. So then I'm just gonna switch to a different side that's more dry. So this is gonna take a little trial and error, a little time to really get it to be a shape that's kind of interesting. Now, I happen to find this in the wood shop. It's actually an old cribbage board. So I'm gonna try stamping this side and I'm gonna see what happens. Ooh, oh my gosh, look at that. It's like Braille. So that's a different way that I could add a design. And some of the boards in front of you, some of them have a texture on one side, but not on the other. You know, experiment, try the textured side, okay? Or try the non-textured side. So I'm just gonna use the edge of this stick, and that's how this texture was actually done, by using the edge of that stick. So that's why I suggested trial and error, because all of these tools are gonna do different things. Ooh, I kind of digging that. So don't forget the bottom, and texturize the bottom as well. So try different things. You know, if you don't like how something looks, take a different tool. Yeah, this is starting to get kind of sticky. The more you work with the clay, the more it's going to get kind of dried out and hopefully less sticky. So if it starts to stick to the tool that you're using, I don't really know a way around that. I suppose we could take a dry towel and try and wipe that off a little bit. Yeah, I kind of liked it better before. Let's see what I can make happen. I'm gonna paddle the bottom a little bit so the bottom doesn't look so heavy. So I like that, how that sits up a little bit more. So now I'm gonna work on making these sides a little bit more perfect. So don't be afraid to just spend some time trying stuff. If you don't like it, try something else. It's kind of a cool shape. Or if I reverse it, it's almost like a diamond. That's kind of cool. So I'm going to continue It does look like a muffin. See, so many awesome things can be made here. So I'm gonna keep playing with this. You're gonna have fun playing with your clay. People who are here, I would say wash your hands first, so because we're going to be sharing tools. So let's just make sure our hands are clean before we're sharing tools. And then you can grab your bag of clay. You can start playing around with the different tools that we have there. I'm going to leave instructions on the screen. And, oh, I didn't show the cutting the lid off thing. All right, shoot, sorry, come back over. I got so excited for you guys to start playing that I forgot to show you the last step. Come on over. Is there? Yeah, there is, okay. So your wire cutter, people at home, looks like this. People who are here, we do have those string wire cutters, but the string wire cutters have a bunch of knots in them. So we're going to use this instead. So if I was totally happy with my shape, which I'm not really yet, so I'm going to cut this lid off, and then I might actually end up putting it back on and keep playing around. But I would figure out, okay, where's the top third or fourth of my project? And that's where my lid is going to be cut. And I'm just going to cleanly, as straight as possible, cut straight across, carefully. Come on. There we go. Carefully lift that off. Put a dry Kleenex or a dry paper towel between them, and then just put that lid back on. Snap your photo. That's it for today. Okay? All right. Sorry. Go to it. People who are at home, stay on the line for just a little bit, please. Muchas gracias. I'm going to stop recording.